As you start to fill up your spreadsheets, you're going to want to know how to move around quickly within your spreadsheets. So we want to talk about navigating your workbook and your worksheets. So here I am on a blank workbook, blank worksheet, and I'm at A1. Now you can always take your mouse and click where you want to go, which is easy enough. So I can click through here. On your keyboard, you have arrows that'll move you down, right, up, left. All of those are available on your keyboard. Okay. Now there are some other keyboard commands. For example, the home button, H-O-M-E, on your keyboard. If you hit that, it always takes you to the beginning of the row. And if you hold down Control and then hit the home button, it always takes you to A1. So that may not be such a big deal when you're just sitting on a spreadsheet that's just fairly a little bit of information past, the view of your screen. But as you begin to build larger spreadsheets and as you start adding more spreadsheets, you're going to want to know more about how to move around and do things very quickly. So let's give an example of how big this spreadsheet is and give you another navigation tool to work with. On your keyboard, you may find a button that says End, E-N-D. And so if you hit End, down in the bottom left, you'll see it says End Mode. And depending on the arrow key on your keyboard, I'm going to hit the down arrow. It'll take me to the end of however far down I can go. So I'm going to hit End. And you're going to see it stops at the last built row of an Excel spreadsheet. Now, if you look at that number, that's 1,048,576 rows. That is a lot of rows. So you have a lot of rows to work with, but how many columns do we have? Well, let's hit the End button again, and then I see End Mode. And then I hit the right arrow because I want to see how many columns to the right. So I'm going to do that. So it goes to X, F, D. That means it's gone through the alphabet enough to come back around to X and then come back around to F and then to D. So I don't know exactly how many columns that is, but it is very large. So if you happen to be here, this is when you would want to know how to get home very quickly. Now you could do the Control Home, and that would take you to A1. Another thing that you can do is use the name box. Now, the name box shows the first cell that is active, and in this case, it's this column and this row, so you're seeing XFD and then the row number. So if you click in here, and I'm just going to put in A1, it doesn't care what case it is, and I hit Enter, it'll take me back to A1. That's a nice way to know how to get around. Now, that works really well on the spreadsheet. Let me put something in here. Let's call it green. And I'll just click away from it. And let's say I'm way away from this somewhere in the spreadsheet. Okay. Up here on the Home tab, you'll see a ribbon goes across the right here until you see Editing, and you'll see a Find and Select area. If you hit the down arrow, you can look for something for Find. You can even tell it to go to certain places. But you can do Find here. And I can say, okay, what do I want you to find? I want you to find green. So if you have spaces in your spreadsheet that have different information, you can tell it to go look for that. So I'm going to hit Find Next. And it found it. So it was on G14, or at least the first instance of it. And then you can keep finding next until you come to the one that you want, or just get a big listing of finding all of them and then choose the one that you want as well. So another way to get around, especially as your spreadsheets start getting more complicated and have a lot more information to work with. Okay, so that's working with in the cells and locating information. Another time that you're going to need to know about navigating is adding more sheets, and as you start building these up, I've had spreadsheets on here before, that's why it's starting so high with the numbers. Let me move through there. So now I have a bunch of spreadsheets, and then I have the ellipsis at the beginning because I'm not seeing ones before it, but I am seeing the one at the end, okay, because it's showing. So if I want to go back, I can hit the arrow, so now I can see the other spreadsheets. But that could get pretty tedious as well. So if you can't see it here and you have a lot of things to scroll through, You can now right click over the navigation buttons. I'm going to bring that up, and it shows you all of your spreadsheets within that workbook. So I click on sheet 14, click OK, and it will jump me to that spreadsheet, and it makes it active. It puts it in the top of the window here. So that's another way to get around. We'll deal more with working with worksheets and adding and deleting, copying, pasting, all of that as we go through the training. One other thing that could help is down here in the bottom right corner is zoom. You could zoom out so that you could see more of the spreadsheet, but at some level it's just pretty dinky and small. We'll talk more about how to zoom in and out of your spreadsheets, so it's easier to look at things or to see how they're going to lay out, those kinds of things. So how to move around, just remember you got a lot of keyboard commands. The name box is a quick way to get around. You also have buttons like page up and page down. So if I do page down, it's paging at a time, paging up. There we go. So I'm sure there's thousands of other tips about navigating, but these are some of the most common ones that you will tend to work with and allow you to see and go to places in your spreadsheet.